Hi again. I just have to say, you guys, I am loving the comments and positive feedback about this serial. This has been some of the most fun I've had in a long time, and it's exciting releasing these chapters to you. For those of you who found me and the WishKeeper on iTunes or through the International Screenwriters Association's website, you can find this serial on YouTube. If you've already found me on YouTube, then you're in the right place, and thank you for being on YouTube. But if you subscribe to my channel there, Max Timm, pretty easy way to search. You'll get updates every week as to when the next episode is uploaded. I'm going to be putting up some other videos and things up there too once my schedule kind of calms down. God knows when that's going to be. But lots of ways to take advantage of the book here. Okay, so let's hop to it. Episode 3 of The WishKeeper, chapters 4 and 5. Have fun!
The WishKeeper, Book 1 of the Paragonia Chronicles. Written by Maximilian Timm. Read and performed by Molly Cash and Maximilian Timm. Episode 3, Chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 4, The Recruit. Thane rushed through a frozen forest, jingling icicles as he flew. Fleeing something, he kept looking back with the hope of evading whatever was chasing him. With a pink purity wish in his arms, the athletic keeper in training with his sharp shoulders and tall frame looked a bit awkward holding such a feminine wish. But he didn't care. He needed to cross over, and quick. Despite Thane's nervous tendencies, throughout his childhood he was heralded as an up-and-coming keeper to watch. He never forgot how proud his parents were when General Barron visited their home in a recruitment effort. The general told his parents that Thane was the youngest fairy ever to be recruited for the keeper force, and that they should expect great things from their son. It was every son's wish come true to genuinely please his parents who were both top wishkeepers in their own right. It was the second most memorable day of his life, second only to the day Barron pulled him aside during a vigorous training run to bear the news that his parents were missing in action on the other side. He knew what that meant. They weren't missing. They were dead. He never appreciated the false hope that came with such a claim of missing in action, but before that day, there was never a moment of hesitation or doubt within Thane. As the years passed, the highly touted recruit quickly sank in the recruitment rankings. Little by little, despite his naturally gifted abilities, he lost confidence. Now, suddenly, here he was gripping a purity wish tight in his frozen arms, and lost. But this was just a training session, and training wishes are always placed in pre-planned areas of the other side, so that instructors can monitor the safe return of any recruit. There was always a safety net. He was always safe. Not this time. He hurled himself onto a nearby branch as neon spell zipped over his shoulder.
Oh, just stop following me,
he complained out loud. His assailants flew past him, about a dozen or more flashes of shadow. Crouching against the tree, Thane got a look at what was tailing him. Lost fairies. He'd only ever heard stories about them, stories that would keep him up at night when he was young. Well, he wouldn't admit it to anyone, but the stories still kept him up at night. He'd heard that thoughtless minions of Erebus had helped take over the other side. With charred, black, bony wings, they couldn't fly. They ate small fairies in their sleep. That last part was unconfirmed, but as Thane stared out from his little perch trying to hold back the shakes, he was beginning to believe every bit of the stories. Dust trailed behind them as they flung themselves through the air. They wore black robes with hoods that covered their pitch-black faces. Their wings were gnarled and broken. They didn't fly as flying goes, but instead used their wands like grappling hooks, spiraling thick spells from tree to tree, swinging and propelling themselves through the air like dusty, shadowed rogues. More than just Erebus had taken over the other side. The job was simple, really. You're assigned a wishmaker. Every wish he or she makes needs to be tracked, monitored, and wrangled, if strong enough. Thane was taught in his wrangling classes that most wishes were wasteful little wisps from lazy makers, but every now and then a fully formed wish would be worthy of bringing back. Thane remembered how much anxiety pulsed through him when he first heard that a keeper's job was to manage all of its maker's wishes. Although he was thankful that only some were strong enough to hold any meaning, it still didn't make a keeper's job any easier. There were stories of such eager and wishful makers that their designated keepers would go mad trying to wrangle all of their wishes, but none of what he had learned mattered at the moment. Since Erebus had taken over the other side, hardly any wish was wrangled and brought back to the nursery. A keeper was lucky to retrieve any at all, and since Thane had just wrangled his very first wish, even if it was just a training wish, nothing was going to stop him from completing his mission, except for maybe the army of zombie fairies currently surrounding him. 100 yards in front of him was the giant oak, A soft white light vibrated and pulsed from high up in its trunk. This was the gate that his general had marked for the recruit's return. Finally, he'd found it. He would get ridiculed for days once he got back to headquarters. If I get back, Thane thought. The last keeper to finish the trials was always hammered with cocky insults. He wasn't sure if he was more worried about returning to the ridicule of his fellow recruits or the lost fairies swarming him. Nonetheless, he had to get to the gate and needed to gather a little courage before doing so. He had a tendency to talk to himself, especially when complaining. Looking at the brightly lit oak tree in front of him.
Let's just shine a bright light and tell everyone exactly where I'm headed. Come on!
In the main surveillance office of the Fairy Intelligence Agency, a massive circular room rimmed with maps and radars, sat a Wish Sentinel. A Wish Sentinel surveys various regions of the other side and tracks the positions of Wish Keepers as they tend to their makers. On this day, the Sentinel was relegated to tracking the recruits. Thane was still struggling to get back, and the Sentinel couldn't help but get a little worked up watching Thane. The Sentinel had spent all morning monitoring the trainees' whereabouts, and even though he finally found Thane, his patience was quickly receding. On the screen in front of him, he watched Thane crouch along a tree branch, holding his little pink wish.
Don't just sit there. Get up. The gate's right there. Go.
The Sentinel called out.
You know he can't hear you, right?
Said a voice from across the room. The Sentinel spilled his tea a bit while standing up and saluting.
Yes, right, sir. Of course, sir.
He reacted. The years had not been kind to Baron, and Shea's growing rebellion wasn't helping his aging process. He looked even more exhausted on this particular day, his dead wife's birthday and all. His hair was streaked with gray, and his eyes revealed too many sleepless nights.
How's the trainee doing? He needs assistance, sir. He'll be surrounded
The nervous Sentinel started.
At ease. Sit.
Baron said as he picked at his teeth with a stick. He bent over and eyed the surveillance screen that showed Thane still crouching.
It's Thane's fourth keeping trial. He blows this one, he's done. No aid.
Baron said, emotionless.
Yes, sir. He actually has a wish this time, sir. A purity.
Baron rolled his eyes at the news. A purity. Not much of a challenge. He removed the stick from his teeth and looked a little closer at the monitor. Indeed, there was the little pink wish.
Better get going, kid.
Mustering as much courage as he could, Thane slapped the bark of the tree, trying to pump himself up.
Here we go, Thane. Last chance to... Whoa!
He jumped back just as a green spell blasted the side of the tree, missing his face by inches. He sharpened his eyes to a squint and dashed off the branch, soaring toward the oak. Green spells lit up the darkness of the frozen forest as he dodged, twirled, and lunged for the glowing gate. Crashing to a thud at the base of the tree, the wish bounced out of his arms. A lost fairy's spell exploded, just missing the floating wish. Thane was lucky this was a purity. It floated right back to him. He cast a wrangling spell around it and pulled it in.
No, get back here.
He gripped it tight and pulled it close as he looked out at the snow-soaked forest. Hundreds of lost fairies dangled from branches, loosely holding grappling spells and hanging from every tree like bats poised to pounce. They were waiting patiently, daring him to make a move.
Oh boy.
Thane slowly aimed his wand as if to fire, but instead quickly turned toward the tree behind him and blasted a spell. It connected to the vibrating gate. Blinding white light beamed and filled the forest. Thane smiled at his hungry attackers as they covered their faces and fell from the trees like dazed gnats. He laughed and, shoulder first, hurried through what he thought was an open gate, but...
Ow!
He slammed his face against the tree. It didn't open.
Oh, come on!
He begged. He slammed his shoulder into the tree again as if trying to open the locked door. The light of the gate slowly faded and the lost fairies recovered, blasting back into the trees.
Open! Open, please!
He cried and slammed his shoulder into it repeatedly. Nothing but solid tree bark. A deep, black shadow slowly crept over him, blotting out the light of the gate entirely. Thane turned and looked. Directly in front of him, stemming from the snowy ground and growing ever larger, was a black-hooded, enormous shadow. Erebus morphed into his hooded shape, his bright red eyes peeking out of a hooded cloak. At one time, Erebus had been human, but since his fall into greed, his evilness had changed him into nothing more than shadow. They knew all about Erebus and the Wishing King's fall from grace. He was barely 7 years old when Erebus was cast away and the true love wish was destroyed. But even though he knew about Erebus and had heard the stories of his demented control over the other side, he had never seen him before. Very quickly, he was reminded why he never wanted to. He could only stare, fighting back unexpected tears, as the shadow of their one-time king towered over him and smiled an evil grin. The Wish Sentinel covered his face with his hands, now genuinely worried about the recruit. He couldn't watch.
Why isn't the gate opening?
He cried.
Whose gate is that?
Asked Baron, frustrated and almost as worried as the Sentinel.
I don't know.
Yelled the sentinel, completely losing his cool.
What do you mean you don't know? It's your job to know. Whose gate is that?
The sentinel realized his foolishness and quickly flipped through a clipboard.
Oh, wait, it's here somewhere. I mean, of course I know whose gate.
The sentinel kept rifling through the clipboard as Baron leaned toward the surveillance monitor, getting a better look. Looking hard at the screen, Baron realized on his own who the gatekeeper was. His fists clenched with frustration.
Here,
Yelled the sentinel.
the gatekeeper is... Oh, dear.
Assemble a keeper force. Now. Get him out of there.
Baron demanded as he flew out a nearby window. The sentinel, still panicked, threw away the clipboard and rushed toward a nearby communicator monitor.
Yes, sir.
Chapter 5. The Wingless Wonder. High up in an ancient oak tree, a slight breeze rustled the leaves of the Paragonian forest. The sun was shining and the sky was a perfect clear blue. The simple sounds of birds chirping to their friends were interrupted by a beeping alarm somewhere below, a call that no one was answering. A few leaves knocked from the grip of their oak companion lazily floated down as a hand tugged a nearby branch with a grunt. A faded, muddy black boot gained its balance on another branch and pushed off. Climbing and climbing, someone was ignoring the incessant alarm. Finally finding the topmost branch, the fairy climbed up. Pulling aviator goggles over her eyes, Shea took a deep breath. Her shredded wings were silhouetted in the setting sun falling behind the mountains in front of her. At the tallest point of the ancient tree, Shea balanced on a thin branch and leaned. The valley spread out beneath her. It was a deadly drop, to say the least. "Let's do this," she said as she readied herself. She snatched her wand, held out her arms straight to each side, and with a deep breath... The alarm below was getting louder, and annoyed, Shea muttered some form of a frustrated curse word. Impatient, she pulled the goggles off, clamped her wand between her teeth, and climbed down. Finally, plopping down near the middle of the tree, she straightened her skirt and rolled her eyes. In front of her was a vibrating, pulsing white light, the other end of a gate. Yeah, relax. Thane leaned against the trunk, never taking his eyes off the taunting Erebus towering over him.
Knock, knock, please.
He said, begging the oak. Thane's eyes were fixed on Erebus. Staring into his eyes, he could feel the cold loneliness that perpetual darkness brings, and a rush of hopelessness swept through him. Erebus smiled, slowly raised his black, shadowed arms, and curled a foggy finger. His lost fairies charged. They blasted themselves onto the branch, diving at Thane, punching and kicking his way through the onslaught. Thane was handling the pawns well, still gripping the wish with his other hand. But this hand-to-hand combat wasn't going to last. It was one hand against many. Erebus crept closer, like a devouring fog. He was inches away before Thane exploded a powerful spell and sent his attackers careening off the branch.
Get off me!
Thane screamed in frustration. Erebus recoiled at the light, but with the blast of the spell, Thane lost control over the wish. It was loose, and though he dived for it, Erebus was quicker. He whipped a wave of black fog at Thane, using the darkness like a weapon, and blasted him back against the tree. A lost fairy snagged and recovered the floating wish. He placed it in Erebus's dusty black palm, and like a thunderbolt, the wish cracked and exploded. Its energy pulsed through Erebus. Breathing in, he consumed the energy of the wish. Gray and lifeless, the wish slid out of Erebus's hand and fell, disintegrating in the wind. Peering back at a dizzy Thane, the Shadow King slowly reached for him again. The lost fairies swung to the branch and approached, menacing, surrounding him.
Don't you wish to stay, little keeper? You would do well here,
said Erebus.
I'd rather die.
Returned Thane out of breath. Erebus smiled.
Really? Then your wish is my... Well, you know what I mean.
All of Erebus's black fog raged toward Thane. It poured over him like a tidal wave, but the sudden exploding light of the gate blocked the rush of darkness. It opened and pulled Thane through. Crashing to the other side of the gate, Thane was thrown to the ground, knocking Shea over. They collided, rolled, and slid through the grass, tangled. Easy on re-entry, jeez, cried Shea.
Easy on the... Are you kidding me?
Thane picked himself up. He charged toward Shea, wand pointed.
I was just staring into the eyes of my death.
Oh, stop being so dramatic, countered Shea.
You lazy no-good.
This time Thane sprinted at her. Go ahead, say it, Shea replied, begging for a fight.
Wingless gimp,
Thane yelled. Enraged, Shea jumped on his back and swung her fists. Her knuckles tumbled down upon Thane's forehead. He tried grabbing Shea's wild fists, surprised at how much those little fists actually hurt. He spun himself, begging gravity for a little help, but she was stuck to him, relentless.
Get off me,
Thane screamed.
That's enough.
A voice yelled as a green spell knocked the wild duo to the ground. Grabbing Thane and pulling him away, Baron swept in and broke up the fight.
You're twice her size, Thane. Knock it off. Sir, because of her, we lost another wish. My wish. Why is she guarding a gate? She can't even... At ease, Private.
Baron cut him off. Thane backed up, following orders, but heaving breaths of frustration. Baron pointed at Shea, pissed. A wooden stump lay behind her.
Sit down,
Baron ordered. Thane gruffly took a seat on the stump, not understanding it was meant for Shea. Shea, still out of breath, just stared at her father.
Thane,
Baron said, not wanting to have to correct him.
Oh, her. Yes, sir.
He said, standing, realizing the seat wasn't for him. It's not my fault Big Nose lost another wish, Shea said.
I said sit down.
And this time, Baron wasn't holding back. Shea finally obeyed the order.
Please, tell me, how often do we bring wishes back?
Shea rolled her eyes in response, prompting Baron to ask again.
How often?
Thane chimed in.
It's been a while since we've... I'm talking to my daughter.
Baron barked. Thane clamped his mouth shut, saluted. Not very, Shea finally answered.
An understatement.
Baron continued.
A wish is lost today because of your carelessness.
I opened the gate, didn't I? Shea returned.
You're done. You're off gatekeeping duty.
What? She yelled.
You're too much of a liability, and with the lack of wishes coming in, I can't risk the...
A liability? I could be twice the keeper this one is if you would let me try and...
Then prove it!
Baron's yell startled Shea. He had been mad before, but this response held more than just the madness of the current situation. He calmed a little and looked at Thane.
You. This is your fourth trial with nothing to show for it. I was ambushed, sir, and if the gate would have... And Erebus. No excuses. You hesitated. You let the lost ones surround you and didn't maintain control of the wish.
You let lost fairies surround you? Shea mocked. They can't even fly.
Yeah, keep talking, wingless.
Thane yelled.
Enough. Home. Now.
Baron barked. With that, Shea pouted, jumped off the stump, and bounded toward the woods. Baron sighed as he watched his daughter leave, then turned toward Thane.
You want to be a keeper?
He asked.
Of course, sir. I had it this time. I just... Stop talking. You've got one last chance. You know my daughter?
Baron asked, already knowing the answer. Thane bit his lip, trying not to say the wrong thing.
You've got your first keeper assignment. Keeper assignment? If you can keep her, you can keep any wish.
Baron floated away. He was done with this conversation.
But what do I do with her?
Thane asked, hoping it was a joke.
Keep her safe and out of trouble. You do that, you'll get your keeper wings.
Yelled Baron, already halfway to the agency headquarters.
Safe and... Yes, of course, sir.
Thane muttered.
We are off and running. That was episode 3, chapters 4 and 5, and these two were chapters taken nearly verbatim from the last draft of the screenplay I wrote for this story. The way Thane and Shea meet in their eventual relationship dilemma was just too fun to let go of, so I quite literally copied and pasted the script scenes into a Word document for the first draft of my book's manuscript. For those of you who know the screenplay world, it's obvious that I added quite a bit of prose to the 2 chapters. There's no way I could get away with that much prose in the screenplay, but while I was putting together this book based on the screenplay version, my very first draft of the book was almost entirely a copy and paste. I copied the screenplay and pasted it right into Word. After some basic formatting, obviously, I then jumped in and started breaking up the script scenes into chapters in the Word document, and suddenly it felt like I had a full book written without even having written the book. But chapters 4 and 5 were, like I said, nearly exact in terms of the scenes from the script, but for those of you who don't know much about the process of writing a screenplay, there are at times movie scenes that are only a page or even just a page and a half long. As I continued to break up the script version into individual chapters for the book in prose, I noticed that some scenes in the script were strong enough to let live as just 3 or 4 page chapters, even less. In this episode that you just listened to, The Wingless Wonder was a very short, action-oriented scene in the screenplay, and it didn't involve Erebus at all. Erebus was introduced later in the script, but I wanted to introduce Erebus in the book as quickly as I could so that the stakes are shown. They prove the danger and impending doom for the overall story and the character, and I needed to get Erebus involved early since this book is relatively lengthy. So I hope you enjoyed Erebus's introduction. There's going to be a lot more coming from him. I will say, and on a different subject, it's kind of funny and not at all easy to read the voices and dialogue of the characters from my book. They've been living in my head for so long, and to suddenly say these words out loud has been kind of fun to do. I am not in any way an actor, and to say that I have more respect now for actors than I already had before recording this would be a pretty major understatement. But I'm having a lot of fun reading these voices. Anyway, next week's episode will include Chapter 6, titled The Babysitter, and Chapter 7, Unfulfilled. And the exciting news, if you would like to get a copy of the book, pre-sales are available through Amazon now, and I would love you forever if you ordered yourself a copy. As a matter of fact, I will love you so much that I'll do something a little extra. The first five people to tweet at me or tag me on Instagram. I'm IMAXTimm on Twitter and Instamax9 on Instagram. First 5 people to tag me with any picture of a fairy. It can be any picture, and feel free to be as creative as you like, but just please be respectful. I know how our imaginations can wander here. And then you have to say, Mr. Timm, buy me your book, please. I take pride in being polite, but I'll buy you a copy of the book. But you have to tag me, otherwise I won't see the post, and I want to be fair. And only the first 5 people, I'll repeat that. I can't quite afford to send off 1,000 copies of my book. So there you have it. In the meantime, keep enjoying The WishKeeper. Thank you for following along, of course, and as always, a huge thank you to Molly Cash, my reading and acting partner, which sounds funny to say. I love my fans and can't thank you guys enough for listening. Keep on wishing, and until next time.